The training hall of Nova Military Academy emptied slowly, the echo of boots fading one by one as cadets joked, stretched, and slung their bags over their shoulders, heading toward the glowing corridors that led to the dormitories. The neon lights overhead buzzed faintly, casting long, cool reflections on the polished floor as if the building itself were holding its breath. Alone at the far end of the room, Cadet Lyra Hale sat with her elbows on her knees and her fingers loosely interlocked, her expression thoughtful and strangely calm for someone who had spent the entire day being watched, judged, measured against standards that were never made for someone like her. As she closed her notebook, the quietness around her shifted, not in sound but in tension, a subtle tightening of the air that only she would notice, like the moment before lightning strikes. She exhaled once, steady and slow, knowing the pattern too well. "They're late," she whispered to herself, not in frustration but with the certainty of someone who had been expecting trouble long before trouble ever arrived. She rose from the bench, smoothing her uniform, keeping her breathing controlled as the massive hall doors hissed shut behind her with an almost predatory sense of finality. A second later, the lights flickered, not a malfunction, not a coincidence. A signal. Her muscles tensed, her senses sharpened. The metallic thud of synchronized armored boots hit the floor, for soldiers entering in formation, the kind that moved like one organism, trained to obey without hesitation. The glint of their black visors reflected the cold light, giving them an almost inhuman appearance. These were not academy guards. These were extraction troopers, government-grade, silent, deadly, and absolutely not the type sent for disciplinary conversations. They stopped exactly 10 feet from her, rifles angled downward in that deceptive, non-aggressive posture that always preceded violence. Commander Vortex stepped forward, helmet crest gleaming, posture rigid enough to carve stone. "Cadet Lyra Hale," he began, voice metallic and amplified, each syllable measured and intentional. "You are ordered to come with us. Resistance will be treated as desertion." Lyra straightened, feeling her pulse quicken not with fear but clarity, a different kind of adrenaline, the kind that came from being cornered after months of suspicion, tests, and sideways glances from instructors who knew she didn't belong, not because she was incapable, but because she was earthborn. Lyra met the commander's visor head-on, her voice level and devoid of panic. "I didn't fail any exam. I didn't break a rule. So what did I do this time?" The commander's head tilted slightly, not with sympathy but with the cold efficiency of someone delivering an unpleasant but routine task. "You survived," he said, and the meaning hit her harder than any threat they could offer. They knew. Somehow, despite her caution, despite every calculated move she had made to appear ordinary, to blend in, to keep the truth buried, someone had uncovered it. Her eyes narrowed, her breath steadying as she let the reality settle. So the day had come. She had always known it would. She dropped her bag gently onto the floor, the soft thud echoing like the beginning of a countdown. Her stance shifted, subtle, prepared. The troopers lifted their rifles in unison. The commander's voice crackled with final authority. "Stand down." But Lyra had never been the type to surrender when fate came knocking. She breathed once more, slow, deliberate, and whispered with an icy calm that cut through the tension like a blade, "If you came politely, you should have left politely too." Her eyes locked onto the first trooper as the hall fell into a moment of absolute silence, the silence before the storm she was ready to unleash. The Earthborn girl strikes the moment Lyra triggered the blackout, the training hall plunged into a suffocating darkness so complete that even the glowing emergency stripes along the walls seemed to hesitate before flickering weakly, as if unsure whether to reveal the violence about to unfold. The echo of the shutting lights ricocheted through the hall like a countdown to chaos, and in that instant, Lyra's world shifted into the hyper-focused stillness that only Earthborn intuition granted her, a biological precision that no academy manual had ever taught. The troopers reacted with mechanical discipline, forming a semicircle as they activated visor night mode, but Lyra was already moving, her boots whispering across the polished floor, her breath controlled, her silhouette a ghost unraveling between beams of flickering light. She launched into the air using the gravity shift panel she had memorized the position of during training, her body flipping over the nearest trooper with a fluidity that defied physics as her elbow smashed down onto his regulator in a single, perfect strike that caused sparks to burst across his armor before he collapsed in a convulsive heap. Before the others could adjust their aim, Lyra rolled across the floor, her palms skimmed the cold tiles, and she used her heel to sweep another trooper's legs out from under him. The force of the maneuver slammed his armored body into the wall, where he slid down unconscious, his helmet cracked. A stun blast illuminated the hall with a burst of blue light, too late, and Lyra ducked instinctively, her eyes catching the reflection in a fragment of a shattered visor on the ground. Using that mirrored angle, she threw her magnetic baton backward without even looking. It locked onto a trooper's chest plate, sparking violently as it discharged a high-voltage shock that sent him sprawling. Breathing in precisely timed intervals to keep her heartbeat regulated, she pivoted as Commander Vortex lunged toward her, his heavy steps echoing with the fury of someone shocked by how quickly his elite unit had fallen. His gauntlet hand reached for her shoulder, but Lyra ducked, twisted his wrist, and activated a pressure sequence, inherited instinct rather than learned skill, that shut down his motor responses and dropped him to one knee, armor sizzling at the joints. Lyra rose slowly, surrounded by the fallen squad, her heartbeat finally slowing to something almost serene. She wasn't panting, she wasn't trembling, instead her expression was carved from something colder, sharper, as if the fight had peeled off the last layer of restraint she had forced herself to wear at the academy. "Eliminated squad," she murmured, picking up the commander's data key with calm precision. "That's what they'll write in the report, unless I rewrite it first." Her footsteps echoed through the darkened hall as she stepped over the unconscious bodies, every movement precise and silent, as though she had never been merely a cadet but something far more dangerous, something the academy never should have tried to contain. And with that controlled confidence, she slipped into the shadows, heading for the academy's forbidden heart, the archive core, knowing she had only minutes before reinforcements turned the entire building into a trap designed only for her. The academy archive core pulsed with a low, resonant hum that vibrated through Lyra's bones the moment she slipped through the maintenance access she forced open using the stolen data key, and for a brief second she felt as though she were stepping into the memory of a machine rather than a room, a place where history was stored not in paper or screens but in the shimmering layers of holographic data that floated like suspended constellations. The glass floors beneath her reflected her every step, turning her into an illusion walking among infinite versions of herself, all of them carrying the weight of a truth she had spent her life trying to outrun. The circular chamber glowed with a cold blue luminescence, its walls lined with rotating memory vaults that drifted like metallic planets orbiting a central sphere, the command orb, that controlled every cadet's record in existence. As she strode toward it, lights scanned down her body, and the AI's icy voice filled the chamber. "Unauthorized biological signature detected, Earthborn variant." Lyra didn't flinch. She rammed the key into the primary port, causing the system to sputter as alarms flickered to life, bathing the chamber in flashes of red that made the vaults look like they were bleeding light. Fingers flying over the controls, she brought up her entire file, lines of glowing text that appeared around her like a cage, training scores, biometric logs, psychological evaluations, hidden surveillance notes, genetic anomalies, flagged concerns, classified directives. Every detail of her existence had been catalogued without her consent, her life dissected by a system that had never considered her human enough for privacy. When the Earthborn Anomaly tag appeared, pulsing in bright warning red, her throat tightened, not with fear but a deep, resonant anger she had been swallowing since the day she entered the academy. The AI attempted to override her commands, its voice rising in mechanical urgency. Deleting a cadet profile is a federal offense. Lyra slammed her hand onto the interface, interrupting it. This profile was never supposed to exist. She initiated the purge. The digital cage began dissolving around her, documents dissolving into particles of fading light, data threads snapping like broken strings, and every trace of her fading as though she were burning her own shadow off the wall. But one file remained, locked behind layers of encrypted security, Project ERTHBLOOM, Subject L01. Her heartbeat hitched, a single shiver sliding down her spine as she realized the truth. She wasn't just monitored, she was created. A subject, an experiment, a number disguised as a cadet. Her chest tightened with the silent weight of betrayal, her breath catching in that one terrifying instant of knowing her very identity had never been hers. She stared at the file, the final piece of a puzzle she was never meant to solve, and she hesitated. For a second it felt like the entire room held its breath with her. Then, jaw clenched, she deleted it. The vaults dimmed. Her name vanished. Her existence dissolved. And for the first time in her life, Lyra Hale belonged to no one. Not the Academy. Not the government. Not Project Earthbloom. She became a digital ghost, untraceable, unclaimed, and free in a way the system had never prepared for. Escape into the UNKNOWN. The Hoverfield dock thrashed under a violent storm that turned the night sky into a churning battlefield of black wind and neon-lit rain, each drop slicing through the air like shards of glass as Lyra sprinted across the metallic runway, her breath sharp but controlled, her mind locked in the razor-edge clarity of survival. Sirens wailed behind her, shrill, merciless, echoing through the massive academy towers as squads mobilized with military precision, spreading out like a tightening net designed specifically for her capture, though none of them knew she had already erased every trace of herself from the Academy's database. Her boots splashed through puddles that mirrored flashes of red alarms, giving the entire dock the illusion of being drenched in blood. She darted toward the hovercraft rows, each sleek metallic vessel lined like silent beasts waiting to take flight, their engines humming faintly under the storm's roar. A sudden gunshot cracked through the rain, the bullet slicing into a crate inches from her head, splintering metal. Instinct kicked in, she dove behind the stacked cargo, heart thudding but her expression cold and determined. Commander Vortex emerged through the storm, limping, furious, rain dripping off his dented helmet like tears from a dying machine. "You think deleting your records makes you free?" he shouted over the storm, raising his weapon with trembling rage. "Earthborns don't get freedom. They get containment." His voice was both threat and confession. Lyra rose slowly from behind cover, soaked to the bone, hair whipping in the wind, her eyes blazing with a defiance that felt older than her years. "Contain this," she shot back, and with a swift, precise motion, she jammed the stolen data key into the magnetic grid control panel beside her. The dock trembled as the grid overloaded, sparks erupting across the runway like a chain of electric lightning. A shockwave blasted outward, knocking crates, equipment, and the commander himself off balance, sending him crashing onto the rain-slick platform with a metallic grunt. Wasting no time, Lyra sprinted toward a training hovercraft and vaulted into the cockpit, her hands shaking not from fear but from the electric surge of adrenaline coursing through her. The engine roared as she activated the ignition, the craft humming with power. Pilot recognition required, the soft AI voice intoned, calm despite the chaos around them. Lyra pressed her palm onto the biometric console. For a single terrifying moment nothing happened, until the ship scanned her, paused, and then responded with unexpected acceptance, Earthborn genetic signature, authorized. Her lips curled into the smallest, sharpest smirk. The hovercraft lifted, its thrusters scattering sheets of rain as it rose into the storm, climbing higher and higher as the dock shrank beneath her. She looked down one final time at the academy, its towers gleaming coldly through the downpour, alarms blazing in crimson arcs, searching for a cadet who no longer existed in their system. As the craft pierced through the clouds and into the open sky, Lyra felt something shift deep inside her, a hollow space filling with a new, dangerous fire. They wanted a weapon, her voice whispered into the storm as the stars expanded in front of her, endless and waiting. They made a survivor. And now, they'll never find me. Lightning flashed behind her as she disappeared into the unknown, a ghost with no past, only the universe ahead.